Hello there and welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for everything soilless cultivation. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp, and today we've got some breaking news. Yes, Russia has officially recognised bananas as an agricultural crop. I don't know what bananas were classified as before, but the Russian government have decided that they are officially an agricultural crop now. And I think that what that means is that any researchers can now get grants for researching prospects of growing bananas in certain regions in Russia, and they can get green lights for commercial greenhouses and, crucially, subsidies on those greenhouses and productions and facilities. The reason why Russia have done that is obvious. They've got, obviously, restrictions on international trade since they invaded Ukraine, and other things they've done before that as well. And so if you're in Russia, and you're a horticulturist, then maybe you could start growing bananas. We'll unpack how you actually do that in today's episode. And if you're elsewhere in the world, maybe you want to grow hydroponic bananas, and I'll give you some tips and some hints on how you could potentially go about doing that. I've not grown hydroponic bananas previously. I have grown bananas. I've got bananas in my garden, but they're soil-based bananas. The first thing to know is that bananas are not trees. There's no such thing as a banana tree. They are herbaceous, so they don't produce wood. They are perennial though, so they live for a number of years, and they do have a stem. So that's why people, or a trunk. That's why people get confused, but they're definitely not trees. They're very large tree-like structures. The other thing to notice is they're monocarpic, or many species are monocarpic, and that means that after they flower, they can die off. But the good news is they produce new shoots or pups that replace the previous plants. And so because of this life cycle, they produce a pseudo stem or a trunk, and they fruit only once. So there you go. Now, if you think of bananas, you obviously think of tropical grow conditions or subtropical regions. Think Central America, Southeast Asia, East Africa, the Canary Islands. So ideal conditions are 25 to 30 degrees Celsius daytime, steady sunlight, and 90% humidity. And that's pretty much the ideal conditions, but they must not fall below 15 degrees Celsius, which will stall growth. And frost and even low temperatures can cause the pseudostem to collapse completely. So even below 10 degrees Celsius, you're in real trouble. So that's why greenhouse cultivation in cooler climates requires strict environmental control. They can be grown in greenhouses, but you can't let your heating fail. So who's growing bananas hydroponically? Well, there was a commercial glasshouse trial in England, an attempt at all year round UK production, but that has stalled mainly due to the cost and environmental complexities of growing such a large crop in a glasshouse with such a long period to harvest, and the fact that you can get bananas fairly cheap still. This is not a high value crop really, but could be one for the future if disease wipes out the plantations. For more on that later. Various research institutes have tested hydroponic bananas in controlled environments, though no scalable results as yet. And then in the 1980s, Purdue University did a trial, and they found that bananas were one of the top crops that could potentially be grown in a moon base with a hydroponic garden. So when we colonize the moon or Mars, as well as potatoes, as in The Martian, it could be bananas and potatoes. What recipe can you cook with bananas and potatoes? Contact me on social media and tell me what's the ideal banana potato recipe. I do like a banana split. So yeah, but I don't know where potatoes come into that. So what varieties are there and what are the pests and diseases? Well, it's the dwarf Cavendish is the one variety that's grown worldwide. It's the one crop that is grown with just one variety. There's very little genetic diversity amongst those that are grown, and there's been very little successful attempts to introduce new varieties from with genetics from outside, and that comes with a number of issues. Yes, they're all consistent. A banana is a banana, tastes like a banana, but there have been issues where it's thought that actually older bananas that were more susceptible to disease. Different varieties had different tastes, and now we're left with this one bland taste. Same with strawberries. It's thought that strawberries used to have lots of different tastes. You can grow Japanese bananas, Musa Baju, I think, off the top of my head. That's what I have in my garden. They're smaller, but they are somewhat frost tolerant, and they're grown as an ornamental plant, not as an edible crop. So I have them in my garden. Some years I remember to wrap them up in bubble wrap to protect them against frost. Other years I don't. In the years I do, the pseudostem is protected and survives, and the tree grows tall. The plant grows tall. In other years, I forget to bubble wrap them, and the pseudostem dies, and the pups sprout up from the bottom, and it grows again. It's really the wind that is the issue, though, in environments like England, and it has two effects. In the summer, it rips the leaves and sort of produces these pseudo-compound leaves where they're stripped. And then in the winter, it's like the wind chill effect. They strip, freeze dry the plant, so that it actually dies out of lack of water. So that's why put something, even just like some plastic around, or some fleece, or some Hessian wrap, or something like that, helps. And also you've got to make sure they don't get too damp in there, because they'll get fungal diseases. And fungal diseases are the main issue. There's something called Panama disease. It's a soil-borne fungal banana killer. It's a fusarium wilt, and it is the main threat to banana production worldwide. And people are trying to breed bananas to be resistant. They're trying to do things like RNAi technology, CRISPR technology, new pesticides, things like this to control fusarium wilt. There's also banana weevils, aphids, nematodes, something called black sigatoka. I'm not sure. I'll get a picture of that up. That's a foliar fungal disease, so it looks pretty nasty. Black sigatoka. And as I say, wind damage, that's a big issue. But yeah, fusarium wilt or Panama disease is the one that everyone is concerned with. I think bananas are a massive crop in Panama, aren't they? And almost like the banana companies run Panama to the extent, although I think Donald Trump's saying that the Chinese run Panama at the moment, aren't they? So, cultural practices and propagation. Propagation is by dividing the pups, the small little plantlets that grow at the bottom, but be careful to avoid rot in humid hydroponic systems. You know, we're saying that these need to be 90% humidity, but they could also, when you cut them, there's a wound, and fungal pathogens could get in, so sterilize them with something, even if it's just mild bleach. We've had a dwarf Cavendish in the office that's died, and that produced loads of pups, and then eventually it just gave way, and then the centre of the plant just died off, which is unfortunate. Normally, with its bananas in the UK, in grow shops and things like that, it's mainly spider mites. Always be wary of going too close to an ornamental banana if you have a hydroponic setup, because ornamental bananas indoors can get covered in red spider mite. So if your local grow shop has a banana, stay well clear and ask the person in the grow shop to check it for spider mites, because they are notoriously, spider mites will kill the banana plant stone dead, and almost impossible to clear the plant. You would need I'd use some sort of protectant, and I would use biological control to try and get rid of them. And also just put them outside, give them a dose of UV to help get rid of the spider mites. Spider mites hate being outdoors normally, so especially on very sunny, cold days, so that might be a good option. Did you know that bananas can even walk? So it's thought that banana plantations walk and move out of fields. The pups emerge sometimes a metre away from the parent, the pseudostem, and so if they all move, if the ground's crowded, they can all move in one direction to fresh cultivated land. So that's why people talk about bananas walking. It won't surprise you to know that banana fertilizers tend to have a high potassium level, especially during fruiting. Bananas are renowned for their high potassium level, and that potassium has to come from somewhere. And if you're growing hydroponically, there's only one place that potassium is coming from, and that is through the fertigation and the fertilizer. The good news is that the vast, vast majority of hydroponic fertilizers contain ample levels of potassium, and all of the additives contain loads of potassium as well. So in hydroponics, I always say, normally you've got too much potassium, not a deficiency in it. So if I was growing bananas, I wouldn't worry about it. Consistent calcium and magnesium to support fruit integrity is important. And your nutrient levels should be higher than lettuce and tomatoes. These do require a high dose, so the upper end of your fertilizer regime. And then monocots, which is like grasses, bamboos, onions, in that section of plants. And so if monocots need lots more silicon than other crops. So if you're used to growing a dicot plant like tomatoes, cucumbers, hops, legal cannabis, what other crops are dicots? Trees, apart from conifers, cherry trees, they require a lot of calcium. Monocots need a lot more silicon than those crops. So I would really bump up your silicon additive. As you said, there's ornamental plants that can tolerate down to minus 10 degrees Celsius, but your hydroponic grow room wants to be easily above 20. One of your issues is going to be the height that the plants can grow. They can grow very tall, multiple meters tall. Can your grow room or your greenhouse accommodate that? Have you been able to remove disease from the starting material, the propagation material, make sure it's quarantined? Be terrible to set up a lovely hydroponic banana cultivation system, say in an isolated area like the Faroe Islands, and say, oh, we're going to grow bananas, reduce our reliance on imports. It's going to be great because it's going to be disease-free. Then you import all these pups, and then they've all got fusarium on them. So you really want to make sure you're sterilizing the hell out of these bananas before you put them into your environment, and you start moving around a hydroponic system that's going to spread spores and pathogens all around. So you're going to have to budget your heat and your humidity and your air movement. It's going to be very little energy intensive. It's going to be fertilizer intensive. It's going to be heat intensive. You're going to have a lot of humidifiers running. You're going to want a lot of wind as well, because that heat and that humidity to get CO2 into the leaves, you're going to need good air movement, but not to the point where you damage the leaves, obviously, because that will impact growth. And you're going to have to cost out your pups, but they should be fairly cheap. I would sanitize with bleach. I'd go again with the hydrogen peroxide. I might even do a lime sulfur, things like that. So, as I say, there's future potential, especially with Russia's recognition now. They have officially recognized bananas as a crop. It's like when they officially recognize some breakaway republic in Georgia or Moldova, Transnistria, something like that. They're the only country in the world that officially recognizes them, and they issue them with passports and stuff, just to cause a bit of chaos in those countries. So, yeah. But no, I think everyone can agree that Russia recognizing bananas as a crop is probably a logical thing to do. They're not recognizing them as a automotive vehicle or something like that. Strange. I would have thought that there's probably been a lot of development in Kazakhstan. Yes, don't mention Borat. Kazakhstan for bananas, because they've got subtropical greenhouses in Kazakhstan, and there's a lot of money gone into greenhouses in Kazakhstan because I think they've got very close relations with Russia, or traditionally they have, and so they could potentially export. They're not subject to EU bans on fruits and vegetables. So I think the horticulture industry in Kazakhstan is being a bit of a boom at the moment because of that. If you know anyone in Kazakhstan, please share this podcast with them. Haven't got any listeners in Kazakhstan yet, or many of those Central Asian states, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan. Which ones have I missed out? Yeah, any of the stands that are in Central Asia, Afghanistan, share this podcast with them. If you know anyone in the military in Afghanistan, share this with them. Any special forces, so I can get some listeners there. So potentially combine it with renewable energy as well to get that heat up. That's probably going to be anywhere where you can control and save money on heating is going to be where you can make money in cultivating bananas. Even so, I would imagine if you're growing bananas in Russia or its former Soviet states that are friendly to it, then it's going to be down in the south and in the Caspian Sea in Kazakhstan, or down in, where was the Winter Olympics? In the Black Sea, down there. Let me Google it. Sochi. Yeah, I'd imagine, I don't know, like Turkey's not signed up to EU sanctions on Russia, so perhaps down near Antalya, they might grow some bananas for Russia. It's popular tourist destination for Russians as well, down in Turkey. If you know different, if I've besmirched your country, if I've represented it incorrectly, then please let me know. I would like to know. But yeah, bananas are fascinating. They're technically perennials. They grow for many years. They're monocarpics. They die after they flower. They're not trees. And while hydroponic banana production will be very complex, you've got to get all that root system into perhaps a very small rock wall slab. It's not impossible. I would imagine you might have to support them because they're not going to have the root system stability that you might have to tie them up like a normal, like a vine crop. All sorts of things that, I haven't considered here. Just the practicalities of growing them. I would definitely inspect them for fusarium and spider mites on a daily basis. And I'd look at what was the optimum CO2 levels. Because of those high humidities, CO2 supplementation will probably be essential. But that's it for Hydroponics Daily today. If you know more about growing hydroponic bananas, then please let me know. Yeah, maybe one advantage would be that you could harvest them closer to the point of ripeness, so you could supply more nutrient-dense and flavoursome bananas that don't have to be picked when they're green. There won't be any tarantulas or spiders crawling in the boxes like when they come from the Caribbean and places like that. Africa. What other advantages could we have? Just lower air miles. Something like a pineapple can travel 10,000 miles when it's picked in Brazil, travels to Indonesia, comes back to somewhere else to be, processed further and things like this. So yeah, you could potentially, although it's energy intensive, could potentially be lower carbon. So, but I would imagine unless the price of bananas shoots up due to fusarium wilt, it will stay on very small scale. But as I say, Russia, there's a potential for commercial production because of the export controls. Don't know what the price of banana is in Russia. If you're in Russia and you know what the price of banana is, then let me know. And since the invasion and war in Ukraine, has the price of bananas gone up? I'm allowed to say war. I don't have to say police operation, do I? Because I'm not in Russia. I'm not going to Russia anytime soon. So yeah, since the war in Ukraine, the invasion, has the price of bananas shot up dramatically to the point where it's commercially viable to get production. The thing is that bananas are such a staple crop. Although they're a fruit, they are, everyone loves a banana. And it's not like a niche crop like wasabi that's expensive, but only a few people are going to eat it. Everyone virtually eats a banana at least once a week or something like that, or bananas go into food. They're the number one ingredient in smoothies. There's a great example of, you look at innocent smoothies, they say like, blueberry and cranberry and all this and stuff. But you look at the ingredient, the main ingredient is always bananas and apple juice. And so, yeah, bananas used in a lot of processing. And when they're limited, people yearn for them, especially in Europe. So when I was a kid, we had a East German exchange student in our house just after the Berlin Wall came down. And she said that when she was younger, queued all day to buy her a banana so she could experience a banana. And that's crazy, isn't it? Can you imagine your mother queuing up all day to buy you a banana, something that we take for granted and just go into the supermarket and throw in our basket. We don't even look at the price. Well, I don't, but yeah, I'm in that lucky position. So yeah, maybe one day with fusarium and increased conflicts around the world and food insecurity, maybe we'll all start queuing up for bananas and trying to grow them ourselves in our hydroponic setups. Who knows? Thank you very much for listening. That's been Hydroponics Daily for today. If you know somebody who wants to grow bananas hydroponically, then share this episode with them. Thank you very much.